Hey, what's up? This is Will Spur with Abysmal Hymns, and I got Reza Mills with me, and we are going over our top five songs by Iggy Pop, and in that we're including his band, the Stooges, who were one of the forerunners of punk rock back in the early 70s. So yeah, and then Iggy Pop is going to be kind of like some of these artists like David Bowie, where they have a career that kind of spans a lot of ground and have hopped on a lot of styles from proto punk to some more experimental stuff. So yeah, how about you get us started off?
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, not much needs to be said about Iggy, really, but legendary figure in proto-punk. I mean, he was there before the Sex Pistols and Black Flag, etc., and the godfather of that whole scene. And you mentioned the Stooges at the beginning. So what better way to kick off than a track from their self-titled debut, which I believe came out, I think it came out in 1969. And just double checking date, yes, it did. And it was produced by John Cale. And I'm afraid my first choice is going to be somewhat predictable. I'm going to go with I Want to Be Your Dog, but only because it was one of my first exposures to the band. They were a group I'd heard of in the periphery somewhere. I thought Stooges, what, the Three Stooges? No, 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 completely different thing, much better than that. And yeah, this is definitely makes its mark. I mean, obviously the album kicks off in 1969, but I think it's this song, especially with that razor sharp beginning. And I think this song featured in Train Spotting. I can't remember. I know Lost for Life did, but I just have a feeling it was in that film. So that would have, if it was, that would have been my first exposure to the track. So very proto-punk sound, quite heavy actually. I mean, I know obviously they're known for their being the originators of punk, but also don't forget a lot of hard rock and do I stretch the metal? Maybe sort of take their cues from them. This was covered on Slayer's Undisputed Attitude as well, albeit not a particularly great cover, but um, again, it was enough for me to go, oh, that sounds interesting at the very least. Let's go and check out this band, the Stooges, who I've never heard of before when I was 16 years old. So yeah, that was my first choice. Very predictable, but I think sometimes the obvious has its benefits as well. So I Want to Be Your Dog from their self-titled debut from 1969.
All right, yeah, I mean that is a one of their more noted songs, and I mean it's noted for a reason. It's obviously stood the test of time and certainly, kind of broke new ground.
Hmm.
And I would say so. My pick from the Stooges, well, I have a couple, but my
Hmm.
pick from the Stooges is going to be uh, from the 1970 album Funhouse. And I'm going with Down on the Street,
Nice.
which is, the thing that I liked about or continue to like about the Stooges, is, for being early punk, there was still a lot of rock and roll in what they did. And this song definitely you can see where it emerged from, you know.
Yeah.
And there was almost a bluesy element to what they were doing here. I mean, they would have saxophones jumping out, and yeah, it's just a fun song. So I'm gonna
It's a
go with that
fabulous,
one.
it's a fabulous opener. It kind of has a kind of a swing to it, as you said, because you said blues, of course, and it has a kind of a, I don't know, a snarling quality to it. You can sort of hear, I guess, with a song like this. I think the Damned were hugely influenced by the Stooges. You can definitely hear where bands like that were getting their sound. It's a cracking way to open the album. I mean, I kind of had that as a potential alternate track, so I'm glad you took it. But yeah, great choice. Definitely a favorite.
Cool.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'm going to go for a song next from Funhouse. And, yeah, you got Down on the Street, which is obviously the big songs. And just looking at the track listing, TVI and Loose and Dirt, all classics. The song I've gone for, actually, I think it's the longest track, well, one of the longer tracks on the album, from what remember. A song called LA Blues. It's wild. They've always had a jazz influence to them. You rightfully pointed out there's a saxophonist there, there's that kind of element there. This is just outright free jazz. This is like Ornette Coleman, latter day John Coltrane, Albert Ayler, all that good stuff. In this, I can't remember if there's any vocals. There might have been some yelping in there somewhere, but it's just like, Jesus Christ, what on earth is this? After some very, by comparison, conventional sounding songs, they showed that they were a band who weren't afraid to dip into that side of things. And their bigger brother band, the MC5, also sort of took their cues from free jazz and Sun Ra and people like that too. So obviously, for those Detroit bands like the Stooges in the MC5, clearly jazz was a huge influence. And I think even Iggy on his BBC radio show currently does feature a lot of jazz. So yeah, definitely I think it's kind of an overlooked track because some people might not dig it, especially if you're not into jazz. You're just not going to want to listen to this. But I love it. I think it's just, if anything, heavier to me than say a lot of the more conventional quote unquote sounding tracks on the album. So yeah, a bit of a from an obvious choice to maybe a slightly more obscure one. So yeah, LA Blues from the brilliant Funhouse album.
Cool, yeah, for sure. One thing about the early albums too is that there's a very like almost jammy quality to it.
Yeah.
It sounds like it was all just done in one take and they were just kind of, going for it. And it's a really super organic album, so
Yeah,
worth checking out for sure.
absolutely, man.
I am going to go to 1973 for Raw Power.
Yeah.
And this is kind of when David Bowie stepped in and exerted some influence. And I am going to go with the song Gimme Danger,
Uh, yeah.
which is darker, more melodic. You can hear that Iggy Pop can actually sing. Um, and I think that, it's pretty obvious that he influenced, guys like Peter Murphy and Ian Curtis. And you can kind of hear that a little bit on this song. So I'm gonna go with that one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was kind of thinking about Raw Power the other day, actually, and I was thinking, should I include something from this? It's definitely, I would say, out of the early, I know it's Iggy and the Stooges, but anyway, for sake of purposes, the Stooges, early work, not including that terrible record they did later, The Weirdness, but it's definitely the heaviest sounding record, I think. I mean, James Williamson, I mean, man, his guitar playing was insane. It is just unhinged and so many amazing songs. This was the one you chose, a bit more of a brooding kind of number, but yeah, definitely a killer album. Kind of surprises me in some ways that Bowie had an involvement in some ways, but I guess he had his own proto-punk vibes too. So yeah, good choice.
Roy, what you got?
Right, so I mentioned James Williamson just then, and I've actually leaped forward to an album, I think. Now, if I remember correctly, it was the first proper record he put out, like of sorts, since the dissolution of the Stooges. I'm talking about Kill City, which was a collaboration. And the first time I heard the track Kill City, which is the one I'm going to be mentioning here, it was, I don't know if you remember a band called The Fluid, who were like one of those sort of, they were like the more garage rock of the grunge wing. So, alongside bands like Mudhoney and Mono Men and people like that. And I remember them doing a cover of Kill City and thinking, yeah, it is actually a really good tune. And it was kind of a strange record. Apparently, his vocals were recorded on weekends when he received permission to leave a mental hospital. There you go. So obviously a very challenging time for Iggy, and I'm glad that he collaborated with James Williamson again because I think he is an underrated guitar player. As much as I love Ron Ashton, God rest his soul, I think that Williamson was a key ingredient. Definitely added a lot more fire. And I think even fe the album featured Scott Thurston as too. So on keyboards and bass. So yeah, very, very cool record, very underrated. The Sales Brothers appear too, Tony and Hunt, who would of course go on to play with Iggy on a couple of his early albums, as well as Tin Machine, who we featured on the David Bowie special, or no, post-punk special, I think. So yeah, that's my next choice. Kill City, from the album of the same name, and that was around 1977 it was released, although it was recorded between 74 and 75.
Right, yeah, and it was definitely a bridge from what he did in the Stooges to his solo work. So
Yeah.
it's an important album, so I can go with that for sure.
Yeah, and just a quick, remember something. Actually, it was actually released on a record label called Bomp, BOMP exclamation mark, who put out a whole bunch of killer garage rock and power pop. So if you're into that stuff as well, definitely check out the label too, because yeah, very very cool, and I'm glad they put it out because Greg Shaw, who ran it, definitely knew his onions, as we say over here in the UK. So yeah, good stuff.
Awesome. Well, I am gonna jump ahead a little bit, and I had mentioned, David Bowie's involvement with Iggy Pop, which was definitely a huge element once you get into later in his career as well. But there's a thread in a lot of Bowie albums that people might not notice, which is that he covers a lot of Iggy Pop songs,
Hmm.
songs that he wrote for Iggy or with Iggy and they collaborated on. So it's interesting that he goes back and does his own version of a lot of these. There's some noted ones, the ones I did not pick, but could easily have made the list. Stuff like China Girl was originally a Iggy Pop song. So, there's a lot of that going on here. This one is actually a from the Lust for Life album and is a cover that Bowie did on his Tonight album. And I'm going to go with Neighborhood Threat,
Hmm.
which has a darker chord progression. It's closer to the David Bowie version than a lot of the other songs. I'm nothing like it. Like China Girl works off the same chord progression,
Yeah,
but his vocals, are sit weird in the mix versus like David Bowie who wrote it like a pop song. So,
yeah.
yeah, so I'm gonna go with that one.
Yeah, that's a good tune. I mean, that's an interesting album actually, because obviously I think it was his second solo album and chocked full of hits. Lust for Life, obviously, huge. Again, I'll bring up Train Spotting. The Passenger, which Susie and the Banshees do a killer version of that tonight. So success to a degree. So yeah, Neighborhood Threat is definitely, from what I remember, it's been a while since I listened to the record, darker sounding, maybe even starting to veer into nascent sort of post-punk in some ways. Even the track title sounds menacing. And what a killer lineup on the album. Ricky Gardenia, Carlos Alomar. I mean, obviously Bowie, who you mentioned, the Sales Brothers. Yeah, I mean, bloody hell. Talk about getting the creme de la creme of musicians on this one. So, yeah, great record. But I definitely recommend people check out the track you chose as well as some of the deeper cuts. Don't just go for the hits, as good as they are. It is, it is a, it's a far darker record than people give it credit for, I think.
For sure.
Cool, man. So I've actually gone to his debut, proper solo debut, The Idiot, from 1977. Now, one of the reasons I chose this particular record, Ian Curtis, who you just mentioned earlier, apparently when he what's the what's the YouTube phrase, unalived himself in 1980, he was watching Streusek by what's that German director? Werner Herzog. And apparently he had a copy of The Idiot playing at the same time. And I still to this day, Whenever I listen to this album, I'm like, what is it about this record that he had this one playing when he did that? Um, it's definitely, again, I mentioned the darkness of Lust for Life. This goes even further. I think this is a really creepy record. It's definitely, I think it was released in, did he record it in Berlin, in Musicland, which is a really grim building. Um, and so, yeah, that definitely suited it. Obviously, Bowie was doing recording around that time as well. And the track I've gone for is a number called Sister Midnight. Again, it's bleak, like night clubbing. It's kind of really, really starting to, I can definitely sense that he's starting to move into, I suppose, God, he would have predated post-punk, wouldn't he? Because it was just about punk then. So he was kind of so ahead of his time that it's untrue. And I could definitely hear the influence of a track like this and an album like this on bands like Joy Division. Definitely a huge influence. So yeah, I love it. I just love the whole record. It's probably one of my favorites by his, if I'm honest. So yeah, that's my next choice. Sister Midnight on uh, The Idiot, which came out the same year as Lust for Life.
Right, and it's probably one of his best albums because I mean it has that China Girl,
Yeah.
his version of China Girl on that,
Yeah.
and which obviously predated David Bowie's by a good 6 years, and it is a lot darker. So I'm also gonna pick a song from this album, which is Fun Time,
Hey. Yep.
and I like the vocal on it. It's very strong. And once again, you're getting into, like you said, the darker elements where I think this is kind of crosses over into the beginning of goth for me.
Yeah.
Particularly like even night clubbing has that element too.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I think that even like David Bowie had touched on,
Hmm.
um, in some of his darker moments. So yeah, so we were already kind of halfway there. And most of those bands came out of the punk scene anyway, so you know, it's no mistake that this is kind of a touching off point from where a lot of that sprang from. So
You know what's really interesting about Fun Time? I'm just looking at the list of people who've covered it. Peter Murphy covered it. I mean, that's quite apt, right? And but then you've got people like Boy George. Boy
no,
George covered it. I mean, it doesn't seem possible. A woman called I don't know, I can never pronounce her name, but Bebby Buell. I think she was like a groupie slash musician. The Cars, REM. So that's quite an eclectic group of people to cover what is essentially a proto-goth song.
for sure, yeah. But I
Absolutely.
think it just kind of goes to show that the broad influence that where he reached into a lot of different kinds of music to influence it.
I think actually, and the other reason why it's my favorite, I think it's his most consistent solo album because especially I don't know if you're going to cover for your next choice any much later albums, but some of those feel a bit patchy to me. This feels like there's not a dud track on here. There's not a moment that I'm listening to this record where I'm bored. I'm just like, yeah, this is just perfect. As solid as the first couple of Stooges records for me. So yeah, definitely good choice, man.
Cool. What else you got?
All right, so I've decided to go slightly further up with an album called Soldier from 1980. So I kind of touched on, obviously, he was kind of doing the gothy thing and the post-punk thing. This is like an album, and the track I'm choosing is Loco Mosquito. You're like, was Iggy listening to XTC at the time? Was he listening to Oingo Boingo or Devo and the Cars or any of those bands? Because it's like, this is such a bouncy, fun, silly song. I mean, even the title, I mean, come on, Loco Mosquito, what the hell's that? And I think it's got Glenn Matlock of the Sex Pistols in there as well playing. It's just such a bouncy, fun, eccentric tune. And it just sees sort of Iggy having some fun again. After the darkness of some of his earlier work, it's just good to see him, just going out there, not really caring and just doing a silly new wavy pop song. I've always had a soft spot for this record and this song in particular. I just think it's so underrated and underappreciated. Um, and of course, it was 1980, so it's definitely one of his better 80s albums. So yeah, that's my next choice. Loco Mosquito um, from the Soldier album.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting album and a cool song. It kind of dances around a lot of the more experimental era that he was kind of coming out of around that time too,
Hmm.
and was kind of, focusing more on songwriting with this album, I felt. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I just love the eccentricity of it. You know, it's just like to go from something like I want to be your dog or even We Will Fall or Your Pretty Face is Going Straight to Hell to something like this. It's just like, wow. I mean, good on you, Iggy. You know, you definitely one of those people again, and we've touched upon this before, who like Bowie, I always felt like he was trying to reflect the times. He was definitely influenced by what was going on around him, but it never feels like a blatant rip-off, if that makes sense. Like he's cashing in somehow from the latest trends. It always felt so fresh and like it just felt like a natural evolution. And this is certainly a song that feels that to me.
yeah, I mean, music is not created in a vacuum, so I'm definitely sure he was aware of what was going on.
Yeah,
Um, but it influenced him rather than him trying to jump on a bandwagon, I think.
sure. Absolutely, man. Cool.
Cool. Well, this is from probably my favorite album of his, which, I have a penchant for liking people's weird periods. This album I kind of see as another Bowie influence because it feels like he saw the success that Bowie had with Let's Dance and was like, well, I could do that too.
Mhm.
Um, and it has some big hits on it for the time period. It's from 1986, and the
Mm.
album is Blah Blah Blah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go for the song Cry for Love,
Yeah.
which is, more melodic and I guess for him more accessible a little bit.
Yeah.
Not as new wavy maybe as some of the songs on this album.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it still encapsulates a lot of who he is as a singer and, you know,
You know
creator.
what? When I hear that song, it kind of reminds me of the sort of thing that would be featured on a film like The Lost Boys for some reason. You know what I mean? It's a very 80s sounding thing. I mean, done very well, I hasten to add. But I don't know why. It has that vampiric sort of, yeah, hard rocking
Yeah,
with,
it kind of reminds me of something that would be on like a Peter Murphy solo album.
yeah, that too. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love it. Great tune. And a quite strange record, as you say. It's kind of quite experimental, strangely accessible, yet without being embarrassing.
Right. There's that.
Definitely. And Steve Jones appears on a song or two, I think. Is it?
Yeah, and which is funny because I didn't pick a song from this album. Just it's one of those things where there's a lot of stuff that he does.
Yeah.
But I always liked his Instinct album,
Yeah.
which Steve Jones actually plays on. And when I saw him on that tour. That was the first time I ever saw Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
And Jane's Addiction opened up. And I mean, nobody knew who they were at the time
Yeah.
because it was like 1987, maybe.
Sure.
Um, and yeah, so and that's a worth checking out. I mean, it was a little harder edged album than, obviously this stuff. Yeah, 1988. So
Mm. Mm. Do we have enough time for me to slip in a quick bonus
yeah,
number?
yeah, yeah, for sure.
I slip one in. All right. Well, it's funny you should mention Instinct actually, because I too have a soft spot for it too. Unusually for the style of music it is. And when I looked at the description, genre tags are always problematic. I mean, it's got glam metal in there. This is not glam metal at all. This is like hard rock, heavy metal. But again, done in Iggy's own imitable style. And the song that I've gone for is the end song actually, Squarehead. It's just got such a groove to it. I'm sure if I remember correctly, there's some footage of him from around this time. I think it was 88 or whenever. And he makes an appearance on one of those chat shows and he just comes bursting out. And I think this was one of the songs that he does it with. Can't remember if he was wearing like a green suit or something, who knows with Iggy. But yeah, it's such a catchy, groovy song. And I mean, there's so many cool tracks on here. I mean, Cold Metal itself. But yeah, Squarehead's definitely one of the funner songs on here and a really good way to conclude the album.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I think this is one of the last of his last strongest albums. Although Brick by Brick I was not opposed to.
Hmm.
Um, he did go down some weird roads along the way. And some of that I've been revisiting, and there's some albums that aren't, that bad at all. So
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Brick by Brick's weird. I mean, I like it, but I don't. I mean, there's some songs on there absolutely stupid. I mean, come on. I mean, you got songs called Butt Town for goodness sake, and what's this other one? Pussy Power. I mean, come on, Iggy. I mean, I get it. He's kind of a bit of a tongue-in-cheek guy, but I'm like, yeah, it's kind of kind of silly, really. But it's still a fun record for what it is. I mean, doesn't Kate Pearson, is it? B-52's make an appearance on this as well.
yeah, she's on the song Candy,
That's right. Yeah, yeah, giving it a campy fun appeal.
which that felt like that could have been like a bigger radio song at the time, but it was just, I
Yeah.
think if it come out a little later, it might have hit.
Yeah, and I guess around 1990, so I'm trying to think about what was happening musically. You had thrash, and I guess the nascent grunge scene, hair metal was starting to die out. So it's kind of a bit of a weird time, really, wasn't it, on the musical level?
Yeah,
So
it just seems like it would have been a song that would hit bigger in 1994 than 1990.
yeah, sure. Absolutely, man. Cool. Is there a bonus one you want to slip in or?
I mean, there's so many, so it would be hard to say. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess um I like the song I Won't Crap Out from Brick by Brick. That's a good one.
Yep.
It's a little more melodic. Anytime where he like shows that he can like sing.
Sure.
Because
He's a
he
good
does so much stuff that's kind of spoken word at times
Yeah.
that it's easy to forget that he's a pretty good singer. So I think that the
Yeah.
Blah 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 album really captured that well. And then there's a lot of, and a lot of the albums that we already mentioned, you can kind of hear that.
Yeah.
I
He
think
did that.
since he was,
Yeah.
such a baritone, he doesn't have the range of like David Bowie, but
No.
because he never goes into like falsetto.
No,
But
no.
yeah, so he just works with what he has really well.
Yeah, he does what he does, he kind of he's one of those vocalists who I mean he's more about the charisma really, coming in and doing his weird bodily contortions, super flexible guy, of course. And yeah, I mean, if you were looking for like one of the great vocalists of all time, I don't think you would include him, but certainly in terms of rock star appeal, very, very well read, intelligent guy. Yeah, he does what he does extremely well. I'm a big fan, so from that perspective, certainly.
Cool. So there we go. There's our top five Iggy Pop songs. I think next week we're diving into Soundgarden.
Aye.
Um, Speaking of grunge, so that was one of Reza's picks. So we're gonna kind of revisit their career and look for the top five Soundgarden songs.
And I just
And
want to reassure folk, we're not going to feature any solo tracks from Chris Cornell, including Scream. That won't
right,
be
yeah,
happening.
no solo Chris Cornell. I never really even heard much solo Chris Cornell,
No.
except for, I mean, if you want to count Temple of the Dog. But
Yeah, yeah. I'm Audio Slave were terrible. But yeah, you can't beat Soundgarden.
awesome. Well, that'll be next week. And till then, click all the buttons you need to click and check these guys out. Have a good one.